That highway was a sheet of ice, and I didn't see it coming. One minute I was just trying to get home, the next I was spinning, tires sliding sideways. Felt my heart tighten, hands clenched the wheel. Thought I might roll off into the ditch, maybe flip over. But I got lucky. The car swung around, headlights flashed across the guardrail, then the tires caught some traction. Came to a stop facing the wrong way. It was still snowing, that wet, slushy kind that looks harmless but screws you over fast. My breath was shaking. I sat there a minute, didn't even curse. Just stared at the flakes hitting the windshield. I remember feeling old right then. 50 years behind me, give or take, and it felt like my body weighed more than the car. So many nights on the road, so many hours behind different wheels. You'd think a man figures out everything about driving by that age. But nature will remind you quick. You're not invincible. You can't plan for wet snow, black ice, or the sudden things that come up in life. After I got myself turned around, I realized I was way too rattled to keep going wherever I'd been headed. So I decided to go home. Thought I'd get a hot meal, maybe a shower. Relax. I had this itch in me to see my family. I'm not a sentimental guy, but sometimes you get that need. It had been a long week. Work. Bills. The usual. My younger boy was on my mind. He'd texted me about some fishing show he wanted us to watch together. So I figured, fine. Let's do that. Let's have a quiet night. I pulled into the driveway, saw the light in the kitchen window. Surprised me a little, because it wasn't that late. Maybe around 9. My wife usually turned in early on weekdays. I thought, well, maybe she had a rough day. Sometimes she'd sit there, pay some bills, read the mail. I carried my jacket, trying not to track snow inside. My shoulders ached from gripping the wheel so hard. My boots squeaked on the porch. I remember that sound, loud in the cold air. Inside, it felt warm, but in a stale way. Like the heater had been going nonstop. The place smelled like leftover coffee and something sour, maybe old wine. I pushed the door shut behind me, set my keys on the counter. Then I saw her at the table. She had this big glass of red wine, half empty. Her hair was down, like she'd been running her hands through it. Her eyes were red, too, not from crying exactly, more like from something deeper. She looked at me, but it was like she was looking through me. Hey, I said, quiet. I wasn't sure if she was upset. I hung my jacket on the back of a chair. You all right? She raised the glass to her lips, took a sip. Her lipstick left a mark on the rim. Her eyes flicked from me to the window. She said something I couldn't make out, so I stepped closer. That's when I saw how her hand was shaking just a bit. Not a lot, just enough to notice. You're home early, she said after a second. Her voice sounded flat. Thought you'd be on the road till midnight. Car slipped, I said. Scared me half to death, so I turned around. Figured I'd come home, maybe get some dinner. She nodded, but she didn't move. I felt the heat from the vent near my feet. It hissed and hummed. The fridge kicked on, then off. I looked at the countertop, saw an open bottle of wine. 2 glasses, but only one in use. I wondered if she'd been waiting for me. Or if she'd been waiting for something else. You okay? I asked again. She tilted the glass, then looked at me. I'll never forget that look. Tired. Distant. Like she'd already left the room, and only her body was there. Then her lips twisted, almost into a smile, but not quite. I'm fine, she said. Just thinking. I wanted to ask about the kids. Our younger boy was upstairs, I guessed. The older one was away at college. House felt hollow. Usually there's some kind of noise, TV, a washing machine, something. That night, everything was quiet, except for that hum from the heater. I grabbed a chair and sat down across from her. Took a breath, tried to calm that jolt of nerves I still had from the drive. I'm starving, I said, just to say something. Mind if I heat up something? Maybe we can sit together. She shook her head like she didn't care. So I got up, opened the fridge. Cold spaghetti, a little sauce in a jar. I set them on the counter, wondering if I should keep talking. She wasn't looking at me. She sipped her wine again. When I turned back around, I saw her eyes shining, like tears were about to come. My stomach tightened. I almost said, "What's wrong?" But something told me to wait. She spoke before I could decide. Voice quiet, almost apologetic. "I drank too much," she said. "Probably shouldn't be talking like this." I swallowed. "Talking like what?" She shrugged. Then she set the glass down, watched the red liquid slosh. She pressed her lips together. For a second, I thought she'd cry. I hoped she'd talk. I was ready to comfort her if she was just feeling lonely or stressed. But that's not what happened. She said, "You're a good father. You know that, right?" I didn't see the punch coming. I just nodded like a fool. "I try," I said. "Kids deserve it, you know." She let out a breath. "Yeah. But one of them isn't yours." That's what she said. Plain as daylight, but so soft I almost didn't catch it. "Isn't yours." Those words stuck in the air. I stared at her face, waiting for a laugh or some sign she was messing with me. Instead, she took another sip of wine, left a smear of color on the rim. I could hear my own breathing. The fridge clicked on, buzzed for a second, then died again. Everything felt too still. I managed to say, "What?" She closed her eyes. "I'm serious. One of our sons isn't yours. I don't know who the father is." All I could do was look at her. My mind was flipping through years, images, birthdays, doctor's visits, all those late nights when I was up rocking a baby, changing diapers. I thought about the two boys. Thought about how people said they both looked like me. Thought about how many times I'd introduced them as my sons. How I'd proud-footed around the ball field. How I bragged when the older one left for college. How the younger one liked to fish with me. And now she was telling me this? She started laughing then, but it wasn't a happy laugh. More like a short, strangled sound. Her lips twisted. God, I don't even know how to say it. Or why now? I felt like something heavy slammed the back of my skull. My vision blurred. I tried to speak, but my jaw just hung open. I tasted acid in my mouth. My heart pounded, and I realized I was gripping the edge of the table. My knuckles were white. She waited, maybe for me to yell or break down. But I couldn't. I couldn't move. I saw her face in front of me, saw how the lines around her eyes were deeper. She looked older than she had that morning. And suddenly everything was quiet. Even the heater vent seemed to go silent. I stood up slow. Felt my legs tremble. I walked out of the kitchen without saying a word, marched down the hall to our bedroom. My hands were shaking so bad I could hardly turn the knob on the door. I went to the dresser where she kept old photos and letters. I yanked the drawer so hard it nearly fell out. Inside were pictures of us together, pictures of our boys, drawings they'd made when they were little, scribbled hearts and stick figures labeled Mom and Dad. All the stuff she liked to keep safe. I grabbed it all in a stack. My arms full. I might have dropped a few pieces along the way. She followed, stood in the doorway, breathing fast, but not saying anything. I didn't look at her. I carried that whole pile to the living room and dropped it into the fireplace. It was cold, no fire lit, so I knelt down, grabbed a pack of matches from the mantel. I think one fell out of my hand because my fingers were unsteady. But I struck another, touched it to the corner of an old photo. The flames started slow, then spread. I watched them crawl across the glossy surfaces. It smelled like burning ink and old paper. She stood behind me, exhaling in these shallow breaths. I could almost feel her body shaking, or maybe it was mine. I didn't speak, and neither did she. In that moment, everything we'd been for decades was in those flames. The pictures curled, blackened around the edges. The kids' drawings shriveled up. The heat touched my face. I felt empty, like somebody had hollowed me out and left the shell. She took a step closer. I heard the floor creak. Maybe she wanted to reach out, but she stopped. I kept staring at the fire until it was all ash. Then I stood up. I could smell the wine on her breath, or maybe it was coming from my own head. Could have been anything at that point. We just stood there, quiet, the only sound the hiss of burning paper. Then I left. Didn't look at her. Didn't bother to see if she was crying. I went to the bedroom, kicked off my boots, and sat on the edge of the bed in the dark. My mind was spinning, worse than the car on that highway. I wanted to wake up from a dream, but this was real. Eventually, I lay down on top of the blankets, stared at the ceiling, and listened. The house felt dead. She didn't come in. After some time, I guess I fell asleep. Or maybe I just drifted off into some place that felt like sleep. Didn't dream. Didn't want to. I woke up before dawn. My mouth tasted stale, like I'd swallowed a handful of dirt. The pillow next to me was untouched. No sign of her. My first thought was to check the kitchen, but something in me hesitated. The memory of last night came flooding back, and I felt my chest tighten. I got up, rubbed my face, and walked through the hallway. The place was cold. I realized the heater must have switched off at some point. On the living room floor, there was a little pile of gray ash in the fireplace. I remembered the pictures, the drawings. Everything. My stomach clenched. In the kitchen, the empty wineglass sat where she left it. The bottle was still on the table. I walked around, opened a cabinet, grabbed a mug. For a minute, I thought about making coffee, but my hands were too unsteady. I looked out the window. The sky was a dull gray, starting to lighten up with morning. No tracks in the snow, no sign of her car. I went upstairs and knocked on my younger son's door. He was probably asleep, so I just cracked it open to peek in. He was curled up under his blankets, breathing slow. The kid was maybe a sophomore in high school by then. I stood there, counting each breath he took. Didn't wake him. Something in me hurt deep. I didn't know which son wasn't mine, but the thought tore at me anyway. When I went back downstairs, I saw her jacket was gone from the coat rack. Her boots were missing, too. I felt my pulse jump. Maybe she'd gone out for a drive, or maybe she was at the neighbor's or the store. But something told me she wasn't coming back soon. I tried calling her cell phone. No answer. I tried again. Voicemail. I let it ring, then hung up. Couldn't think of a message to leave. Didn't even know how to put it into words. Hey, come home, we need to talk about how you broke my heart last night. It sounded pathetic in my head. Part of me wanted to yell, smash the wine bottle, do something dramatic. But I was too damn tired. So I got dressed, ate a piece of cold bread, and went to look for her. I drove over to her mother's place on the other side of town. The roads were still slick, the morning slush not fully melted. My hands gripped the wheel so tight my knuckles went pale. Her mother's house was small, shutters peeling. I parked on the street, walked up to the porch. Knocked. The old lady opened the door, face tight with suspicion, like she expected bad news. She was in her robe, hair messy. Is she here? I asked. My voice cracked a bit. She stared at me a moment, eyes narrowed. No. Are you sure? She let out a snort. I'm sure. I haven't seen her. I believed her. We never got along great, but she wasn't a liar. I wanted to ask if she knew anything about last night, but something told me not to. I just turned around, walked back to my car. I heard her mother shut the door behind me. Didn't offer any sympathy. Probably didn't know what was going on, and I wasn't about to explain. I tried a few other places I thought my wife might go, just driving around town, looking at all the familiar spots. The grocery store parking lot, the local diner where she used to meet her friends. Nothing. Finally, I sat in my car outside that diner for a while, engine running, heat blasting. Snow piled up on the windshield. My mind felt numb, replaying her words, replaying that laugh, that strange, bitter laugh. After an hour, I gave up. Went back home, found my younger boy awake in the kitchen, scrounging for cereal. He looked at me with sleepy eyes, said, "Where's Mom?" I lied, said, "She left early." He just nodded and poured some milk. I didn't have it in me to break his morning with all that crap. I spent the day moving around the house like a ghost. Cleaned up the wine bottle, wiped the table. Vacuumed the living room where bits of ash had scattered. Burned my own fingertips picking up a hot coal I didn't see in the fireplace. Cursed under my breath. Time dragged. The house felt too big. By evening, I was exhausted. I went to bed early, didn't bother turning on the TV. My son stayed in his room, probably playing video games. He asked once if Mom texted. I said no. That night I barely slept. Kept staring into the dark, hearing that voice in my head. "One isn't yours." Over and over, like a stuck recording. Next morning, I decided to try again. I called her phone, voicemail. I left a short message this time. "We need to talk. Just let me know you're okay." Then I drove across town to another friend's place, a woman named Dana. They'd been close for years, so I thought maybe I'd find her there. I knocked on the front door. Heard steps inside, some muffled chatter. After a minute, the door opened. There she was. My wife, wearing pajamas like she didn't have a care in the world. Her eyes still looked puffy, but she wasn't crying now. She stared at me from behind the screen door, then slid it open. Her friend Dana hovered in the background, not saying a word. I stood on the porch, a little breathless. "You left," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "No note. Nothing." She shrugged, like it was no big deal. "I needed space." "Space," I repeated. My pulse hammered in my ears. I wanted to push past her, get her in the car, drive home, demand an explanation. But I didn't. I just stood there, hands clenched. Then I reached back into my jacket, pulled out a paper bag I'd brought with me. Inside it were old letters she'd written me decades ago. Concert tickets from when we were dating. A crumpled gift tag from some Valentine's Day. All these little scraps of a shared life. I had them stuffed in that bag, and I pulled them out, piece by piece, dropping them on the lawn. Watched them land in the snow, get damp. The letters, the tickets, the notes. All the things she once gave me over 30 years. Her eyes flickered. She looked at the soggy papers on the ground, recognized them. I saw the shock in her face. She opened her mouth, maybe to speak, but no words came out. Dana shifted behind her, eyes wide, but she kept quiet. I took out a lighter, just a cheap plastic thing, and I flicked it. The flame caught a corner of one letter, then I set it down on top of the rest. They started smoking, a little slow because of the snow, but soon enough the edges curled and burned. A small flame licked at the tickets. My wife stood there, pale. She didn't move to stop me, didn't scream. She just stared, breathing sharp. I said low, "Now you know how it feels." Then I flicked the lighter off and let the fire do its thing. She didn't say anything. Just watched. A little breath came out of her, like she was about to sob, but she held it. I turned, walked back to my car. My legs felt wobbly on the steps. I heard Dana call out something like, "Hey, hold on," but I didn't stop. I got in, started the engine, and drove away. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it might explode. I didn't look in the mirror. I didn't want to see her standing there in those pajamas, eyes burning. On the way home, I realized my hands were shaking so violently I could barely keep the wheel steady. But I kept going until I pulled into my driveway, turned the ignition off, and just sat there, breath ragged. My younger son was probably inside, clueless. I wondered how the hell we'd get through this as a family. Wondered if we'd even remain a family. The next couple of weeks passed in a blur. I didn't hear from her much. Sometimes she'd text me about the younger boy, making sure we coordinated who picked him up from practice or who grabbed groceries. But that was it. No apologies, no real explanation. She stayed at her friend's place sometimes. Maybe at a motel other nights. I didn't know. I stopped asking. I was just going through the motions, running on autopilot. Woke up at dawn, threw on my work clothes, got out the door. Drove half asleep to the plant where I did night shifts now and then, but mostly I was shifting to a later schedule just to avoid the house. I worked extra hours, told the boss to call me anytime he needed an extra hand. I'd come home dog-tired, slump into my recliner, and half the time I'd fall asleep there. The younger boy tiptoed around me, not sure how to talk about what was happening. I felt guilty, but I didn't know how to fix it. I was angry all the time. Not the loud kind of anger, but the quiet, seething kind that sits in your stomach and keeps you awake at night. Every time my phone buzzed and I saw her name, I wanted to throw it across the room. But I'd breathe in, let it out, then read her message. It was always practical stuff. He has a dentist appointment at 3. Or, he needs new shoes for track. Nothing about us. Nothing about that night in the kitchen. Then, one afternoon, I got a call from my older son. He was coming home from college for the weekend, said he had something to tell me in person. Sounded nervous on the phone. I tried not to read too much into it, but I had a feeling. So I said okay. I made sure I'd be home Saturday morning, even skipped a shift. When Saturday came, the snow had melted a bit, leaving dirty piles along the roads. My older son's car rolled into the driveway just before noon. I was in the garage, tinkering with an old tackle box. He walked up, gave me a stiff hug. I patted his back, felt how solid he'd become, taller, broader. A man now, not a boy. We went inside. My younger son was out with friends. The house was quiet. We sat at the kitchen table, same place I'd gotten that awful news. My older boy looked around, like he expected to see her. I gestured for him to sit. "You okay?" I asked. He cleared his throat, nodding. "Yeah, I'm fine. School's tough, but manageable." I waited. He fiddled with his phone, then set it aside. Looked up at me. I saw something in his eyes, guilt maybe. "Dad," he said. "I know, what happened?" "Mom called me." I felt my jaw tighten. "She did?" He nodded. "She told me you found out." I swallowed. "Found out what, exactly?" He looked pained, like he didn't want to say it out loud. "That one of us isn't really yours." I felt that same old punch in my gut, like I was back in that kitchen moment. "Yeah. She told me that." He ran his hand over his face, took a shaky breath. "I've known for a while." My heart lurched. "What do you mean, you've known?" He stared at the table, tapping his fingers. "I was a senior in high school. Mom was upset about something, and I caught her in the living room late at night. She was crying. I asked what was wrong, and she just broke down. Told me she'd been with someone else before you two got married. She found out she was pregnant, but she wasn't sure whose kid it was. Then you married her, and she never told you. She kept it hidden for years. But that night, she was feeling guilty, I guess. She told me." I couldn't speak for a minute. I just looked at him. My own son, who'd known the secret. "Why didn't you say anything?" I finally whispered. He swallowed hard. "I was scared. I was a dumb teenager. I didn't want to tear the family apart. So I pretended I didn't know. But I've carried that around for years. When I went to college, I tried to forget. But Mom called me, said you'd found out. Said you were furious. She's worried about everything. She told me not to come back, but I couldn't stay away." I leaned back in my chair. My whole body felt heavy, like I weighed 1,000 pounds. "So you've known for years," I said. "And you never warned me." He grimaced. "I'm sorry, Dad. I really am. But you've been the best father anyone could ask for. You showed up to every game, every recital, everything. You never treated us differently. You gave us a good home, stability, everything. I was afraid if I told you, maybe you'd stop seeing us that way." I took a breath, felt it shake. My eyes burned, but I didn't cry. I just stared at this boy who I'd raised, who I'd taught to drive, who I'd hugged when he got accepted to college. He'd known. And in a way, that felt like betrayal all over again. Not just from her. From him, too. He whispered. Dad, I'm sorry. You're still my father. You always will be. I nodded slowly, trying to keep myself together. Which one of you isn't mine? I asked, my voice low. He shook his head. She never told me that part. I don't know. She didn't want me to share it with anyone. She said it might be me, might be my brother. She was never sure. My mind reeled. Could be him, could be my younger boy. I felt my throat close up. So all this time, you've been carrying that? He nodded, tears in his eyes now. I hated it. But Dad, you were better than any father could be. No matter what. Nothing changes that. I let out a long breath, tried to find some kind of calm. But there wasn't any. Just a numb, hollow feeling that twisted in my chest. All right, I said at last. Thank you for telling me. He started to say something else, but I cut him off by standing up. I couldn't talk anymore. I walked out into the living room, felt him follow me. The fireplace was still dirty from the ashes I'd never fully cleaned. He looked at me, eyes wet. Dad, he said. I turned around, looked at him, and I realized something. This betrayal, I said softly. It's not just her and me. You're in it too. And maybe your brother as well. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. I saw how he wanted to fix it, but he couldn't. Because the damage was done. Years of secrets. Years of lies by omission. I walked to the front door, paused. I need some air, I said. You can stay here, but I need a minute. He nodded, blinking back tears. I stepped outside onto the porch. The cold air slapped my face. Felt like 1,000 needles. My mind buzzed with anger, sadness, confusion. The sky was that dull winter gray, the sun nowhere in sight. I leaned against the porch railing, stared at my own footprints in the half-melted snow. I stood there for a long time, not sure what to do next. Eventually, I heard him inside, moving around. I heard the kitchen faucet. Maybe he was getting water, maybe he was crying. I didn't go back in. I didn't know how to look him in the eye. Because every memory I had was now tangled with questions. Everything felt tainted. The worst part? Deep down, I still loved them all. Even her. But I couldn't unhear her words. Couldn't unsee the moment she laughed in that kitchen. Couldn't forget my son telling me he'd known for years. And something in me broke that day. I felt it crack right down the middle. The day after my older son came home, I packed a bag. Didn't announce it. Didn't scream or argue. Just quietly folded some clothes, took my razor, my toothbrush, the bare essentials. My younger boy was still out with friends, my older son was in his room. The house was silent except for the groan of the heating vents. I remember standing in the bedroom, looking at the bed we'd shared for decades. The sheets were still rumpled from my restless nights. Her nightstand was empty, she must have taken a few things when she left. I thought about all the times I'd lain there listening to her breathe, the times we'd whispered plans for the future, or laughed about some silly thing the kids did. I thought about how she used to rest her head on my shoulder. And then I thought about that moment in the kitchen, how she told me. So calm. So final. Like dropping a bomb. I zipped my duffel bag, slung it over my shoulder, and walked out to the living room. My older son was there, standing by the window. He turned when he saw me. His eyes flicked to the bag, then back to my face. You're leaving? He asked, voice shaky. I nodded. For a while, yeah? He swallowed hard, looked away. Dad, please. I raised a hand. I can't do this, son. Not right now. I can't pretend everything's normal when I can't even breathe in this house. He stared at the floor, tears welling up again. I'm sorry, he said for the 100th time. I stepped closer, put my hand on his shoulder. I wanted to say something fatherly, something comforting. But all that came out was, I know. Then I gave him a quick pat and went to the door. As I left, I told him, look after your brother. Make sure he's okay. I'll let you both know where I am. He just nodded, eyes glistening. I opened the door, stepped out into the cold, and pulled it shut behind me. Didn't lock it. It was still their home. I didn't feel like it was mine anymore. I drove aimlessly for a while, passing through parts of town I usually ignored. Old strip malls, boarded up shops. Gray sky overhead. Eventually, I ended up on the outskirts of our county. I spotted a sign for a trailer park, battered by weather. I pulled in on a whim. Row after row of old trailers, some in better shape than others. I parked by a small office, walked in. There was a woman behind a plastic window, reading a magazine. "I need a place," I said, my voice sounding hollow. She peered at me, shrugged. "Month to month?" "Yeah," I said. "Month to month." She slid a clipboard at me. "Fill this out, and I'll show you what we got. Nothing fancy." I filled it out without reading half the paperwork. Signed my name, scrawled my address, phone number. Then she led me out back to a row of trailers. Stopped at one with chipped paint and a squeaky step. Inside, it smelled a little musty, but it was clean enough. Tiny living room, a kitchenette, a bathroom, one small bedroom. "You want it?" she asked, arms folded. I looked around, felt the emptiness. "Yeah," I said. "I want it." I dropped a deposit with cash I had on me, got the key, and that was that. I was officially out of my house. I texted my older son the address. Told him to pass it on to his mother if she asked. My phone pinged a few times after that, but I didn't check. I wanted to sit in that silence for a while. Over the next days, I got used to living with barely anything. Slept on the stiff mattress they had in there, used the small shower, ate microwave dinners from the little store nearby. Sometimes I just stared at the walls, letting the day pass. Work was my only relief. I started taking night shifts more often, stocking, checking inventory, sometimes driving a forklift. I didn't talk to people, just did my job and went back to the trailer. My younger son texted me once. Asked if he could come see me. I said sure. He came by after school one day, looked around at my new place with wide eyes. I offered him a soda. We sat on the couch, didn't say much. He asked where Mom was. I said I didn't know. He asked if we were getting divorced. I said I didn't know. We watched TV for a bit, some fishing show. I heard him laugh at something. For a second, it felt normal. Then he left, and that hollow feeling came rushing back. My older boy came by too, once, and brought a pizza. We watched part of a baseball game on the fuzzy TV. He told me he was heading back to college soon. Said he'd check on me. Told me to reach out if I needed anything. I nodded, thanked him, but I kept my distance. I couldn't look at him without thinking about that secret. Even though I tried not to hold it against him, it was still there in my head. A few weeks went by like that. Work, trailer, sleep, repeat. My wife never came by. She never called my phone. Maybe she was giving me space, or maybe she was afraid. I didn't know anymore. Some nights, I'd lie in bed and remember that moment in the kitchen, that quiet revelation. I'd wonder which son wasn't mine. I'd wonder about the man she'd been with. Did she ever tell him? Did she think about it all these years? Those questions got under my skin and wouldn't let me rest. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I dug through old photo albums, what was left in my phone anyway. Found pictures from way back. I scrolled through, looking for any sign of that other guy. I remembered faintly that she had an old boyfriend before we got engaged. A tall fellow with dark hair, used to work at a gas station. No new characters, no new events. I only knew him because she'd once shown me a group photo from a friend's party. He was in the background, standing close to her. I had no official way to find him, but I tried. Turned out he still lived a couple of counties away. I drove there on one of my days off, parked near his place. Didn't approach him, just watched from a distance like some detective. It felt ridiculous. But I needed closure. Eventually, I saw him come out to get his mail. He tossed a toothbrush in his trash can on the curb. Maybe it was old. I don't know. My heart pounded. I did something shameful, I dug that toothbrush out of the trash when nobody was looking. I felt crazy, like I was losing my mind. But I wanted a DNA test. I wanted the truth, even if it made me sick. I paid for an at-home test, the kind you can mail in. I did the steps, followed the instructions, used my younger son's hair from a brush at home. I sent it off. Waited. Worked more shifts. Hardly slept. When the result came back, it was positive for paternal match with that man. The words were clear. He was the father. I stared at that paper a long time, feeling numb. So it was the younger one. The boy I taught to fish, the kid who texted me about new lures, who sat in my trailer, drinking a soda, laughing at a dumb TV show. He was never mine biologically. But he was mine in every other way that mattered. And that realization made me feel both crushed and strangely protective. Like, no matter what the science said, that was still my kid. A few days later, I sent her a letter in the mail. Just a plain envelope with no return address. Inside, I tucked the DNA results, along with a copy of the man's photo that I'd found on her old social media, some group shot from years ago. I printed it out, circled his face. Wrote a single line. Your boy is his. Then I sealed it, mailed it. Didn't sign my name. But she'd know who it was from. After that, I didn't wait for her response. I guess I didn't need to. Part of me felt like she deserved to know I knew. Another part of me hoped she might call or show up at my door. But she never did. Maybe she couldn't face me. Or maybe she was relieved. Life settled into a strange pattern. My younger son came by on weekends sometimes. We'd watch sports, or he'd ask me to show him something about bait casting. We never talked about the elephant in the room. He didn't know about the test, and I wasn't planning to tell him. At least not then. He was too young to handle that. He just needed a dad, and I tried to be one, despite everything. My older son texted me from college, letting me know he was doing okay. Asked if I needed anything. I told him I was fine. He said Mom was staying with her friend still, seemed distant. Said he was worried about her, worried about me. I told him we'd figure it out someday. But not now. I just couldn't do it yet. I kept working nights, stacking boxes, keeping my head down. My foreman asked if I was all right once, said I looked tired. I just told him to mind his own. I wasn't trying to be rude, I just didn't want pity. Weeks turned into months. The weather warmed up. The snow melted, leaving behind muddy grass and potholes. Sometimes I'd drive by the old house, see if anything changed. The yard looked unkempt. Weeds poked up in the flower beds. Trash cans out front. It wasn't my business anymore, so I never stopped. Just kept driving. Legally, we hadn't done anything about divorce or separation. We were just apart. Part of me hated her for what she did, for hiding it so long, for telling me in such a cold way. Another part of me remembered how she used to smile when we slow danced in the living room. How she'd hold my hand in the parking lot after the kids' baseball games. How she used to whisper, "I love you," in the dark. One afternoon, I was sitting outside my trailer with a beer, watching the sun dip low over the chain-link fence that marked the property line. My younger boy pulled up in his old car, got out, and walked over with a grin. "You busy?" he asked. I shook my head. "Just drinking a beer, kid." He sat down next to me on the little step. We talked about nothing for a while, school, some fishing spot he wanted to hit come summer, a movie he'd seen. I watched him as he spoke, his face bright, his smile easy. I found myself thinking, that's my son, no matter what the test says. We cracked open another beer. Well, I did, and he took a sip or two when I offered. I know that's not exactly legal, but I didn't care. He was almost old enough. We just sat there like a couple of guys. And for a moment, it felt almost normal. That night, after he left, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. The memory of that kitchen moment still haunted me, her red eyes, the half-smile on her lips, the sound of her saying, "One isn't yours." The memory would flash, and I'd feel that same punch in my gut. I wondered if it would ever go away. Sometimes people talk about closure like it's a box you can check off. You do something symbolic, you get over it. But real life isn't that simple. I'd burn photos, she'd run off, we'd traded quiet stabs at each other. But the wound was still there, deep, festering in the silence. A few months down the line, the older boy finished his semester. He came to see me, told me he might take a summer job near campus. The younger one was growing fast, talking about college too. I realized time was moving forward. With or without me. She never called. I never called her. Maybe someday we'd talk, maybe not. But I still had my boys in my life. They showed up, we ate pizza, we drank beer, we watched baseball. I tried to act normal, but every time I glanced at the younger one, my heart clenched. Love and pain, all tangled up. He looked so much like her. Yet in a small way, he was starting to resemble me in how he acted, quiet, a little stubborn, loyal to a fault. That's the part one held on to. Nights were the worst. I'd crawl into that lumpy bed in the trailer, close my eyes, and see her at the table, glass of red wine, lips stained. Hear the heater click off, the fridge hum and then stop. See the flame in the fireplace, blackening those pictures. Smell the ashes? Feel the shame and anger and heartbreak coil up inside me. It was like a loop I couldn't break. People say time heals, but I don't buy it. Time doesn't heal. It just covers things up with layer after layer of daily life. Underneath, the pain is still there, waiting. Some nights I can push it aside, other nights it's all I can think about. But I get up every morning, go to work, pay my bills, see my boys when they visit. I keep breathing. Because that's what a man does. He keeps going, even when he's carrying more weight than he can handle. In the end, I guess this is my life now. I'm here, in this old trailer on the edge of town. I don't talk much about what happened. Most folks don't ask, and that's fine by me. When my sons come over, we watch fishing shows, crack open beers, maybe order some takeout. I still see the boy grin when a fish jumps on TV, or how he rolls his eyes at some corny joke. It reminds me that love is more than blood. But every night, just before I drift off, I see that kitchen. I see her eyes, hear her voice, and it all comes flooding back. That's the truth. That's what I live with. And in its own way, I guess that's all there is to say.